Hey, wake up. Let's go find out. Hey. Wake up. Let's go find out. Come.
Ambivalence doesn't even begin to describe what's happening to me. It's 6:30 in the morning. My wife is peeing on something that looks like the spaceship from 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's got some ridiculous name like First Alert or Early Responder, something that sounds like a piece of EMS equipment. I should really remember the name, because I went to a lot of trouble to go out and buy it. I wanted to show how positive I was going to be about our plans to have a baby.
Hey, we did it. Isn't that great?
I know that as we peer at the little window, that I'm going to be required to display some emotion. What I'm really worried about is the fact that I can't seem to summon up any emotion at all. To top it all off, I'm having an out-of-body experience. I decided that honesty was the best policy. Well, actually, I do have some mixed emotions about it.
That's just great. I'm pregnant and you're not sure how you're feeling about being a father. That's just great.
Okay, that's not right. Let's go back. Of course I'm happy. It's wonderful. We're the luckiest couple in the whole world. Three years ago, when we found out my wife Julie was pregnant, I wasn't ready for fatherhood. All I felt was anxiety and ambivalence. If I was going to be the with-it birth partner and co-parent that Julie wanted me to be, I was going to have to change. What I want to share with you now is the story of my journey of discovery, a journey that transformed me into the father I wanted to be. Although it happened a few years ago, it sure feels like yesterday. How would I describe the state of my mind at the onset of my journey? Well, if nature depended upon guys like me to rationalize having children, we would have never made it as a species. Can you imagine Mr. Australopithecus doing the numbers, weighing the cost-benefit of reproduction? Let's see. First, I have to trot 20 miles around the savannah with my buddies in search of food, put down a few mastodons, risking major orthopedic trauma, if not death, then schlep back all the meat and get back to base camp in time to give Austro Jr. a bath. I don't think so.
My boobs are already getting huge.
What made things worse was that even though neither of us had done this before, Julie seemed totally ready for motherhood. Her first instinct, to get on the phone with her friends.
And if you have any books, I'd love to borrow them.
She read an endless supply of pregnancy books. And she went shopping. I can still remember thinking, my daughter's about the size of a dragonfly larva. How's she going to fit into these? Within a few weeks, Julie was completely focused on the pregnancy, and I was feeling left out. When I tried reaching out to some of my buddies to get the same kind of support that Julie was getting from her friends...
You'll never sleep again.
You'd never have a moment to yourself again, except when you're on a business trip.
You never go to the movies again, and you never go out to dinner again, unless, of course, it's Disney or McDonald's.
You never have sex again. While you may never have sex again, a baby is an absolute babe magnet.
The only thing my buddies taught me was that maybe I needed new friends. But instead of getting rid of my friends, I set out on my journey in search of the meaning of fatherhood. I interviewed countless fathers and fathers-to-be, sought out experts. I even wrote a book. what I discovered truly amazed me. The first stop on my journey? My therapist. It's the first trimester of the pregnancy, and Julie already seems to be withdrawing. I mean, I'm feeling a little left out, a little lonely.
I think what you're feeling is normal. Pregnancy is the moment where two people become three people, and three is a bad number. Somebody is always going to be excluded, and the first person to be excluded in this situation is you.
Couldn't men use pregnancy to explore their emotions?
Yes, but who's paying attention? Nobody's paying attention to them during pregnancy. Sounds pretty grim, doesn't it?
What do you think couples can do to get in sync, to get on the same page?
You'll have to find the answer. There's no rules. You know, everybody will tell you communications, of course, is the key to that, and it is, as long as you communicate constructively, and we can talk about that. But time is up.
Finding out that confusion is normal is great advice, except for the fact that you're still confused. It was the first trimester of our pregnancy. I needed something more down to earth. My friend Bob the Boxer is a poster child for testosterone and the school of hard knocks. He once fought Larry Holmes for the heavyweight title. But most of all, he's a champion dad. Maybe Bob could teach me how to connect with my wife's pregnancy.
During my wife's pregnancy, I became her personal trainer. I read some books, got all the ideas of what kind of physical activities she should be doing to get in shape. I was having her doing duck walks when she was pregnant, so she'd have an easier birth. And I was having her doing leg raises and sit-ups up to a certain point.
So what do you think? Should we give it a shot?
You've got to be kidding.
Well, after giving it some thought, I decided that Bob's plan wasn't going to work for me. I realized at this point that what I was really looking for was a role model, a guide to help me through the pregnancy. Finding one was proving a lot harder than I thought. I wanted to look to my dad and his generation, but expectations for men have changed radically. Doing what he did could get me in big trouble. Now men are expected to be involved partners, and without updated role models to tell us exactly what involved means, today's fathers are really inventing something new, and that's not always an easy job.
Claudia and Bruce, you can come in now. The doctor's ready for you.
My buddy Bruce Massaro struggles with many of the same issues. Today, as I watch him go through what I experienced 3 years ago, it's kind of like watching a TV show about my own experience. He and his wife Claudia are expecting their first child. Bruce is by her side every step of the way. Going to your wife's first OB appointment has become a real rite of passage for men. I can remember my first time. It was like visiting a different country. No, make that a different planet. After all, is there anything more mysteriously and secretly female to a man than visiting the inside of a GYN office? What does it feel like to come to the office?
Routine. Maybe not routine. I don't know, a little apprehensive. But as I came every time, you know, the place became comfortable, and the doctors were really nice and the nurses were really good. And I seen a few fathers, so I knew that, you know, there are some people out doing the right thing.
How's everything, Claudia?
How you doing, Doc? I love Dr. Klein. Although at first, you know, it was kind of different having a doctor look at your wife's private parts.
So, Bruce, how are you doing? You're like, you have a day job or what? You're always here.
No, I'm nights, 4 to 12s, 3 to 11s.
So you coming to all the appointments this year?
Yeah.
I think it's important. I found the last couple of years, a lot of people, the husbands are coming more and more in which they get involved in the pregnancy earlier than years ago. Are you gaining more weight than her? I noticed this year.
Yeah, I was checking it out before.
I mean, she's doing okay. I don't know. Be careful there. Sometimes you can gain more.
I eat her stuff, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I've been eating mine and hers, and some days I don't feel like eating, you know, it's strange.
Then the stomach ache she had, you had too?
I didn't get the stomach ache. I feel queasy, though, once in a while.
Not unusual.
That's good, because I'm not used to feeling queasy. It's overwhelming.
Let's check out the heartbeat and let's take a look at your tummy. There it is. And that was a kick and a laugh.
That was a kick and a laugh?
There it is. Hear it?
Yeah. Is that like a normal beat like mine?
Yep. At this point in time, everything is just perfect. Any questions for today?
No, I'm happy to hear the pitter-patter.
That's a great thing.
When Bruce and I talked, I realized that today he's facing the same struggle in his search for a role model that I once faced. Inventing something new isn't always easy.
You know, my father's a touchy thing because he's a tough guy, you know. And I don't want to be that tough, but he's a good man. And tears. That's it. Tears. The tears, I guess, are joy that I'm going to experience what my father experienced. And the sadness is that I could hope I could feel it well. More than he let himself feel it. That's all.
I was nauseous.
I threw up, I had back pains, and I craved Chunkies all the time.
I had no reactions at all.
Can a man have pregnancy symptoms? Think it's an old wives' tale? Listen to this. Morning coffee together had been a ritual for us from the very beginning of our marriage. When Julie got pregnant and morning sickness kicked in, the coffee was the first thing to go. It made her queasy just thinking about it. I continued drinking it, but noticed that I too was queasy after drinking coffee. It bothered me a little. I started thinking, well, maybe after 20 years of drinking coffee, I've developed an allergy to it. Then one day, after my morning cup, I ran into the bathroom and projectile vomited into the bathtub. My favorite joke was, Julie's feeling nauseous, but I'm doing all the throwing up. After my morning sickness, I turned science detective. I learned that male pregnancy symptoms are not a myth. Sir William Trethewin, one of England's most famous psychiatrists, was the first to document male pregnancy symptoms in the 1960s. He called it Couvade syndrome.
The husbands of women who are pregnant seem to suffer from some of the same symptoms as their wives. They get morning sickness, some of them. In extreme cases, I've even seen a man's abdomen swollen up. They get many other symptoms. When their wives go into labor, they may get colic. They may also get toothache. And this is a phenomenon which has been known for centuries now, but it's never been systematically investigated before. I've been interested in it for a long time, ever since I was in the army, when I saw an interesting case of a strapping great sergeant major who had severe abdominal colic. There was no good reason, as far as we could see, until we found out that his wife was actually in labor. And when news arrived about her condition, that all was well, his symptoms subsided like that.
Doc, coffee? Please. And, would you like coffee?
No coffee, thanks. Tea.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Dr. Mac Lipkin became interested in Couvade syndrome after noting that many of his male patients were getting sick for no apparent reason. However, they all had one thing in common. All of their wives were pregnant.
In our study, what we found was that 22.5% of the men whose wives became pregnant sought care from a doctor for those symptoms during the pregnancy they didn't have before the pregnancy or after the pregnancy. And there was no other organic explanation for their symptoms.
So almost 1 in 4 men actually seek out some health care for symptoms. I mean,
Right.
Couldn't it be possible that the actual number of men who have symptoms is much higher?
It could be significantly higher.
You know, I had a really odd experience happen to me. I mean, you know, I've been feeling a little queasy during Julie's first trimester. You know, I walked into the kitchen, had my usual morning cup of coffee, and I got up from the table and I ran into the bathroom and I projectile vomited into the bathtub. Could that be Couvade syndrome?
Of course, that's what Couvade is. It's pregnancy-like symptoms in men whose spouses are pregnant. I have to tell you, Gordon, that's really weird.
Could there be a physiological basis for some of these symptoms?
Absolutely. When you react emotionally, your stomach secretes acid, your colon pulses, your heart rate changes, you sweat or you blush, and there are also hormonal responses. The specific mechanisms of Couvade we're not yet clear about.
If a lot of men are having these symptoms, how come it's not more of common knowledge that this is going on?
Men are embarrassed about this. They don't understand it. If they have some insight into it, it may strike them as weird or strange or something they're not sure they really know who to talk to about. So unless they're really hurting, they don't seek care.
I definitely had morning sickness. I did not know what it was. I thought I had some kind of mild flu. And it's like it was one of these things where my skin was sensitive and I'm like, my fingers are swollen and literally I was sick. And it got to the point where I would only say what I was feeling and then she would tell me what stage of the pregnancy we were at and I was at. But it was extraordinary. But I completely thought I'd lost my mind.
I had morning sickness. She'd get up, fix breakfast. I'd look at it. Looks good, honey. Eat it, run right to the bathroom.
The night we got pregnant, I knew we were pregnant. I knew it was a boy. Knew it.
You know, bang.
Yeah, boom, 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 bang. It's a boy.
That's it, honey.
I would believe that a woman's body having your child in it almost could probably bring some sort of sensations or something out of you, because that's what it sounds like to me. Like I'm more attracted to my wife's feelings, not only to her now, but to what's going on in her life, and what else would explain it.
The superstition is if you climb over your pregnant wife, like say you're in bed, you gotta go to the bathroom. She's like in a way, you climb over her. you will start seeing, you will start having all the symptoms. That was the superstition. Then my wife said, oh, you're just trying to feel what I feel and be close. But I said, if I'm feeling what you're feeling, then why you ain't sick? Why you not throwing up? Why your back doesn't hurt? I have no back problems. My lower back, right above my buttocks. To get out of a chair, I had to get out like I was a pregnant woman, like this. And I was in pain, and it was physical pain.
What a relief to know my reaction to pregnancy, nausea, vomiting, and everything else wasn't unusual after all. By the end of our first trimester, I was going to every OB appointment with Julie and was well on my way to becoming the ideal father-to-be. I'm beginning to get the hang of this pregnancy thing. It's our second trimester. 1 down, 2 to go. My therapist, my friends, and Dr. Lipkin have all helped me put my reactions into perspective. My Couvade symptoms had gone. I didn't know why, but I really didn't care. I was ready to move on. I was in the clear and ready for a whole new experience. Crippling anxiety. The eradication of cat poop has become my life. Every morning I go through the same thing. I come down here, I go through the cat pans, and I get rid of every one of these little devils. What I'm doing is mounting an all-out war against an unseen enemy. The microorganism Toxoplasma gondii, which are found in raw meat and cat feces. Usually contact with Toxoplasma gondii is no big deal. In most people, what you get is a slight fever and swollen glands, and it's all over, and you usually don't even know you've had it. Unless, of course, you're a fetus and the possibility exists that you might get brain damage or malformation, or, in some cases, death. A high percentage of people are already immune. less than 40% of women pass it on to the fetus. Of those, 2/3 of the fetuses exposed remain unharmed. But statistics didn't help my paranoia. One morning what happened was that I'd gone through the whole process, I'd gone through the cat pans, and I was washing up in the sink. And after going through all this whole thing, which took probably half an hour, I put my blue gloves above the dish rack. And I noticed as I was walking away that there were some drops of water dropping onto the dishes. And I flipped out. Basically, I thought, oh my God, what have I done? I've got to clean everything all over again. The paradox is, the more information you have, the less control you feel. My research also taught me that men feel an innate guarding instinct about their pregnant partners, a need to protect them at all costs. In prehistoric times, I'm sure it made a lot of sense to act this way. There was danger everywhere. But today, this instinct can lead to some pretty strange thoughts.
When I found out Alex was pregnant, it's like signing a contract for a fight. You're right away. You know you got a date and you got a time and you know who your opponent's going to be. For that is the birth.
My thoughts, my instincts, were just as strange as Bob's. Take our amnio, for example. I can remember the thing that was really flipping me out was this idea that a stranger was going to be penetrating my wife's abdomen with a 12-inch needle. Never mind that the stranger was Julie's OB and that she had 20 years of training and experience. The way I figured it, the only person who should be doing this procedure was me. Bruce was much more sensible about the amnio than I was, but I could still feel his tension.
Relaxed? Nervous? Normal to be nervous. Nothing to this. We found that a lot of times when we do amnios, that it hurts more when they draw your blood than stick a needle in your tummy. So we're going to wash off your tummy, put some sterile solution on it.
Claudia, you gotta relax.
It's not going in the belly button.
Not at all.
Oh, okay.
This is just sterile gel.
We put a needle into your abdomen, not at your belly button, a little bit lower, and we put it away from the baby to take fluid out.
Keep still, baby. You all right?
How our roles as men have changed. I could never imagine our dad's generation doing what Bruce is doing.
I can't. I'm scared.
It's okay, honey.
Ow, ow.
You can't move, baby. Just chill.
Just get it out already. Okay.
That's the worst of it. Just relax.
Ow.
We're all finished.
After the amnio, Bruce shared with me what he was feeling.
You waited for this day, and you're relieved that you've gotten here, you've gotten through this, you know, and then you're just hoping everything afterwards goes as planned.
Midway through the second trimester, I was feeling anxious about Julie and the baby's safety. At the same time, I also had to deal with another problem, Julie's body. Around the 5th month, women start to show. Their bellies start popping out like beach balls. And if you're the man, you can no longer deny that your wife is pregnant. This physical realization starts spilling over into all corners of life, especially sex. There are basically two kinds of people in the world. Those who like having sex during pregnancy and those who don't. And I was definitely in the second camp.
Sex became even more appealing.
Sex disappeared. I was afraid of hurting the baby.
I loved my wife's body while pregnant.
Around the 5th month, Julie's libido went right off the meter, and mine went into hibernation. Every night, she'd chase me around the bed, and believe me, I was running. What did our caveman ancestors do before the invention of therapy?
There are several reasons why men have a hard time with sex or hard time being aroused or not interested in sex during pregnancy. Some men. One is the wife is becoming a mother, which means she's very powerful. 2, there's as much as there's desire to be with a mother, perhaps unconsciously, sexually, that's a big taboo, obviously. That's a turn off. And 3, there's a fear of hurting the baby.
Some of my friends agreed with my therapist, but most of them didn't quite share his point of view.
I don't see my mom when I see my pregnant wife. I don't see mom at all. My wife looked good. Real good.
There is a little bit of room for expansion.
Paranoia, fear of sex. I decided that maybe the cure for strange thoughts and difficult feelings was getting out of my head and into a pregnant body. My dose of reality came in the form of the empathy belly. 35 pounds of lead shot and water, complete with a special attachment to press on the bladder. I invited Bruce over to my house for some tea and empathy. Stephanie, a childbirth educator by profession and a drill instructor by nature, helped Bruce and I achieve the proper empathetic frame of mind. After telling us we look cute, she sent us on our first mission. I could barely reach the sink. I keep feeling like if I bend over, I'm gonna need a winch to get myself back in the proper position.
Oh! I told you not to stack that high.
Maybe one of you would like to sit down and rest and wait for lunch.
After a while, Stephanie took pity on us and gave us a break.
Maybe we should both sit down. We're working so hard
Sure,
today.
you can each have a seat. Just look nice and comfy.
The only problem, the idea of sitting down scared me. How would I ever be able to get back up?
I thought I was going to go through the chair if I went too fast.
Before we got too comfortable, Stephanie sent us upstairs to make the beds and do some laundry. I think it's a really awful suggestion.
It's got to get done, though. Things have to get done, so let's get up.
After you. Age before beauty.
Well, I definitely have to urinate.
Stop the beds, please.
Well, I have to say, Bruce, I'm really, really uncomfortable.
How about sex?
I really had no idea how physically uncomfortable it was. And more than that, I had no idea how much sort of psychological stress it places on you.
I mean, I feel more worldly a little bit, you know, like I experienced both sides. I agree. I'm a little tired, though.
Let's take a nap.
Okay.
With the help of the empathy belly, Bruce and I were able, at least for one day, to experience what a pregnant woman experiences. What did we learn? Empathy is a good thing. It helps you become a better, more caring partner. But having empathy for our partner isn't the same thing as dealing with our own feelings and fear.
Than fetus, volume-wise.
Would you see any abnormalities now?
3 years ago, I had to learn, as Bruce is learning now, to see those feelings as a valuable part of my own pregnancy experience. As for how to deal with them,
what are we looking at?
It's being there for moments like this. Seeing your baby suck its thumb for the first time.
The thumb is sort of near the mouth. Okay, so
I can't believe he's sucking his thumb.
That puts everything in perspective and connects you with the new life to come. When Julie and I hit the third trimester, the last frontier, things were really coming together. I was finally feeling less like a clueless husband and more like a competent birth partner. There was only one little problem. I was completely and utterly exhausted. What was going on? My Couvade symptoms were back. Julie was running around like the Energizer Bunny. And me? I was so tired I couldn't get out of bed. It felt like my blood cells were riding around on lazy boys. And of course, Julie's looking at me like she's ready to kill me for being a malingerer. I remembered what Dr. Lipkin said. 1 out of 4 men actually go to see their doctor for their symptoms. That would be me. We finally decided it was Lyme disease. Julie made me go see my GP, who told me it was all in my head. But I wouldn't leave his office until he took some blood. Coincidentally, The same day, I went with Julie to her OB appointment. I told the OB the story, and she started laughing at me. I felt like a 10-year-old. My gonad shrank. She prescribed some Valium for me. I felt so humiliated. 3 days later, the Lyme test came back negative. But it didn't matter. The symptoms were already gone. Looking back, I think part of Julie felt touched that I was having these empathetic symptoms. But the other 99% of her was saying, get over
Don't
it.
come back till you feel better.
I needed to know why I was having these reactions that were beyond my control. So I hit the road as my journey to learn more about the male reaction to pregnancy continued. What I needed were some heavy-duty science gurus to help me on my quest. Where do you find a guru when you need one? In California, of course. To find out what happens to men during pregnancy, researchers often start with mice, California mice to be exact. David Gubernick, a psychobiologist, has been studying California mice for decades.
Gordon, welcome.
Hi, David.
Good to see you. Gordon, this is one of the sites that we study the California mouse in. It's this oak woodland.
Most mammal dads have nothing to do with the young after they're born. California mice, on the other hand, are one of a handful of mammal species that are biparental, meaning that the male is as equally involved with caring for offspring as the female. Since their behavior is similar to human behavior, we might actually learn something about our own biology by studying theirs. What can men learn from mice?
What we found is that the relationship between the male and female, that bond, is important in the male's response to the young. And it is specifically, it's the effect of the female and her presence that affects the male and his responsiveness to his offspring. Chemical signals from the mother is what actually helps keep the male parental shortly after birth. And the mechanism by which that operates is some chemical signals from the female in her urine that induces the male to act parental and keeps him acting parental.
A chemical signal in urine? Could it be? Who knows? After a long night's drive, I arrived at my next stop. It sure looks like we're in Southern California, but it's actually the home of two evolutionary psychologists who study another time and place, more like the savannas of Africa, 1.6 million years ago. Maybe the roots to my pregnancy symptoms lay somewhere in man's prehistoric past. What possible evolutionary purpose could it serve for a guy to throw up while his wife is pregnant, or to feel really tired, or, any other number of things?
Well, certainly things like throwing up and losing a meal's worth of energy, or feeling tired and not being able to go out to hunt, that's a serious cost. So if it has some kind of evolutionary significance, there must be some kind of compensatory benefit that outweighs that. And the thing that pops into my mind is the possibility that it's signaling, that it's honest signaling that he's invested in this pregnancy, he cares about this woman, he intends to be invested in the baby once it arrives, and that these costs are a guarantee of that.
The question that popped into my mind, why was this male investment in pregnancy so important?
Food during human evolutionary history was extraordinarily expensive. Okay, it wasn't just sitting on the shelf. You couldn't call local supermarket to deliver food. You had to go out and get it. You had to hunt it. It's a very dangerous, potentially, and risky enterprise. So pregnancy and postpartum are two energetically very costly enterprises. They require food for the mother. Somebody's got to go get it. For example, lactation, nursing, requires 500 calories above and beyond your normal caloric load for pregnancy. Once again, somebody's got to get that food.
What Don and Ed had to say was strangely reassuring to me. While our pregnancy had turned me into an anxious, nervous, nauseous, vomiting wreck, what my body was expressing might have actually been something ancient and fundamental. But was there biological evidence to explain the changes that men go through during pregnancy? Anne Story, a Canadian researcher, had an answer. I met her when I got back home to New York City. Anne Story had actually conducted hormonal studies on humans, following 34 couples through their pregnancies. After taking initial blood samples from each couple to establish a baseline, she then tried to simulate the emotions of parenthood in a man. This is what she did.
We handed both parents our doll. So then we asked them to put the doll on their shoulder, snuggle it in like you were holding and comforting a baby. Once they were all comfortable, we would play The Baby Cries. This was as though it was happening from another room. The baby cry was coming from another room. The doll would be wrapped in a receiving blanket that had been born by a newborn, so might have some olfactory cues from the newborn.
I actually feel like I'm feeling something.
So we played that for 6 minutes and then showed the tape of the parents and their newborn and chatted. And after half an hour, we did another blood test.
So what did you find out?
Well, we found that the men had the same pattern of changes that their female partners had. Women have greater hormone changes, but the pattern was similar. So men were showing increase in prolactin and cortisol, same as their pregnant partners.
Anne went on to say that the same hormonal changes take place in other biparental animals.
Well, we know from animal studies, male birds in particular, and now some evidence in mammals as well, that prolactin may be involved in paternal care. So prolactin changes are turning up in mammals in those few species that do show active paternal care in the wild.
Perhaps the most amazing part of her study was her finding that over 90% of men had at least 2 Couvade symptoms.
The men with the most pregnancy symptoms had higher prolactin levels, and they were also more responsive to our baby cry tape. They responded, they said they were more concerned or anxious about the baby and wanted to comfort the baby.
After I met Anne's story, I would never look at the world the same way again. Men are not biological bystanders during pregnancy. Our emotions, our fears, our behavior, and even our hormones are all perhaps part of a transformation that prepares us for fatherhood. I had learned that it was okay for me. In fact, I knew it was important for me to be a pregnant man.
When I saw that head, there's a baby. It's really a baby. I mean, it was only at that moment that I actually could really understand that I was going to be a father in about 30 seconds. And after that, I was like, oh, damn.
The puffiness is extra fluid, extra water that they retain so that they have enough.
Women have asked other women to be part of their birth experience from the beginning of time. But when a man asks you to take part in his child's birth, it's really something new.
I am going to show you what these stools look like.
My friend Rob and his wife Nicole are due to give birth in 3
These
weeks.
are called meconium stools. This is the kind of stool that
We talked about how he's preparing for fatherhood. I found him putting up baby shelves.
It makes me feel like I'm contributing to the pregnancy and to our child. It's like something that I can offer. Nicole's doing a lot by having the baby. This is what I know how to do. So I'm anxious, but I'm excited at the same time. You know, and then I'm really excited to, like, when we first take the baby home. I think that's gonna be incredible.
One of the laws of nature is that birth always happens at the most inconvenient time.
Okay, I'm on my way.
I got the call early in the morning. It brought back memories of when Julie woke me to tell me she was having contractions. But this time, I was volunteering to give my friend Rob some moral support, as he was about to go through one of the most profound and scary experiences of his life. As I was getting ready to go, I thought about my own experience 3 years ago. Julie's delivery was a 35-hour ordeal. 24 hours after Julie's labor started, she still wasn't dilating, so we had to induce. My bed that night was the Sunday paper laid out on the floor. Finally, the OB said that if Julie didn't push the baby out soon, she would have to do a C-section. 10 minutes before the threatened C-section was due, the baby suddenly broke loose and her head appeared. I'll never forget that moment. I now know the cure for my Couvade syndrome. My daughter Olivia, born 5 pounds, 11 ounces. When I got to the hospital, Nicole was going through back labor and was in a lot of pain. Rob was hard at work, massaging her back with every contraction, trying to give her some relief.
You really have to rub on the side a lot. It really hurts, just so you know.
From my own birth experience, I knew what he was feeling. A manic mixture of worry at Nicole's pain and exhilaration that he was participating in something so dramatic and meaningful.
I am super glad I'm here, and I'll do it again tomorrow. I don't know if Nicole will do it, but I couldn't imagine, you know, being anywhere else but here.
Thanks.
Oh, sure. That's true.
If you were a betting man, how long do you think it would be at this point?
Well, it's kind of like the classic question, and my answer is usually if I could figure that out, I'd write my book and retire.
4 hours later, Nicole was fully dilated, and Dr. DeBroccolier had her start pushing. Rob coached Nicole through each effort.
10. Okay, cleansing breath, cleansing breath. You're doing so good, honey. Yeah, you're doing good. Doing good. Oh, thanks, thanks.
It's sort of tight around there. I think you're getting close to this.
After an hour of pushing, all of their hard work paid off. In an instant, Rob's transformation was complete. He was now a father.
Did you see it? Yeah.
Is it okay?
Yeah, it's cute. It's like swallowing and stuff. It's chubby too. Yeah, it's chubby. Yeah. I got deep voice. Great.
Up he goes.
Look at a little guy. Good job, Mom. Good job.
Pushing.
Wasn't so bad.
Wasn't so bad. See, she's ready for another one.
Did you see your daddy? Did you see your daddy?
Oh my gosh, so soft.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, you have good cries, right, baby?
Yeah. You guys here?
Yes.
Are you awake?
Yes.
Call the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think we have a quarterback.
Really?
Yeah, we have a son.
Oh, I'm good.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I keep hearing
A Whopper.
noises down there, and I'm getting all excited. How big?
913.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Poor Nicole.
Huge. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you.
You must be tired.
Yeah, I'm not too bad. Yeah.
After Rob gave the news to his family, I took a few steps with him on his way to his new life. I felt proud of Rob. What had been so difficult for me, for him, came naturally.
Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thanks for your help. That was awesome.
Birth changes every man, whether he's experienced pregnancy symptoms or not. Why does it have such a powerful effect on us?
What we found was that testosterone in males decreased after birth compared to testosterone prior to birth, which is really fascinating.
So this incredible drop in testosterone after the baby arrives, what does it mean in terms of my behavior?
We know that testosterone is associated with aggression or infanticide towards offspring. So decreasing testosterone might actually be important in reducing the likelihood of any kind of harmful responses to young in general.
You know, I'd like to think that I would die for my wife, but I know that I would go through, you know, burning oil, piranhas, the Terminator for my daughter.
There's a whole different type of love with a little girl, man. It's like, you know, like you can do no wrong, and you daddy. I mean, you like, well, she says daddy, and like, you know, I heard dad from my son now. He said, hey, dad. But I just don't get that chill when my daughter says dad, or fix me this dad, or can we do this dad?
The love I have for Jared, you know, I've never experienced love like this.
I'm more patient, I'm more understanding, I'm more, you know, forgiving as a father than I ever was as a husband, as a human being, or anything else.
Most men I've spoken to say the same thing. I feel different now that I'm a father.
You're perfect.
Why do we feel this way? After 3 years of research and first-hand experience, I can come to only one conclusion. Men become pregnant too, and we have a physiological transformation to call our own. We are literally different people than we were before the pregnancy. New thoughts, new priorities, new emotions, new love.
Under their ribs were little animal hearts that pounded with the same animal thud.
Let me just say that it's a good thing that men go through these emotional changes.
I do the mom and you do the daddy dad.
It's nature's way of preparing us for the toughest job in the world, being a good father. This is the end of my story, but not the end of my journey. I've got an even tougher assignment now: fatherhood. Colic, diaper rash, sleepless nights, timeouts, dating, body piercing, college tuition.
What would really be an interesting idea is if men themselves can actually get pregnant and carry an infant to term. I mean, if men could actually do that, I think that would change the nature of the world. It certainly would change the nature of relationships, but it would also change the nature of everything else in our whole Earth, environment, universe. It'd be really interesting to see how many men actually would want to become pregnant if they were given the opportunity to.